let's just throw all of that away. We'll use that later in our thinking of poetry. But first I want you to think of a poem as a snapshot of life. As if you took a picture, and you know these days we all love pictures because we have our cameras, because they're right there on our phones, right? We take pictures of ourselves. Everywhere I go, people are taking selfies, right? Or taking pictures of their friends, posing in the park, or whatever. So think of poetry as a snapshot of life. This is a snapshot of life. This is my daughter Elise, Bob and my daughter Elise, and her husband Mike, and their little baby Charlie. Charlie is our first grandchild. We have 3 grandchildren, but she's our first. So this is a snapshot of life. If I wanted to bring this emotion to you, I don't want to tell you a story. I don't want to tell you what to think of these people. I don't want to tell you what to think in this story or this snapshot. I want my word choice to be such that it evokes some kind of feeling in you. In order to do that, we have to remember, I'm not telling a story. I teach 12-year-olds. I teach 7th grade. They want to tell a story. They want to write a sentence. And they don't want Mrs. Toller to get it wrong. They want to tell me exactly what to think. Unfortunately, Mrs. Toller might be like some of you. I don't like to be told what to think. You could ask my husband. I don't like to be told what to think. I don't want to be told how to feel, right? So I want to give a snapshot of life, and in the details that I put in the poem, I let you know how I feel, and I make you feel something too, okay? I don't want to follow a rhyming scheme. My 12-year-olds, if they think they're writing a poem, they want it to rhyme, because if it rhymes, it's a good poem, right? If it rhymes, it must be good.
Yeah.
So they are so worried about those rhyming words that there isn't much imagery in the poem. And so it fails. So get rid of that rhyming scheme thing and that rhyming pattern for right now. And don't tell me what to think or feel. So what do I do if I don't do all of those things? What should I be doing? Well, we think of one snapshot of life. My 12-year-olds will say to me, I can't think of anything. Exactly. When we say think of something in your past, well, my 12-year-olds don't have as much past as I have, right?
Yes.
Yeah, that's true. But they do have images from their past. But they have to find them. They're in there somewhere, but they have to dig for it. They have to find it. That part is called brainstorming. There is no wrong answer in brainstorming. It's finding whatever is in your brain. So we have to dig through lots of things. And we have to think of imagery. In order to do that, we have to start with all 5 senses, okay? And so I have to say to myself, a picture of life. I'm not getting anything, Mrs. Toller. I don't get it. Okay, so then I say, what's your favorite food? Can you think of your favorite food?
Fried chicken.
Fried chicken. Your favorite food? Pho. Okay.
Fresh food.
Fresh food.
Yeah.
Okay. Your
Meat.
meat. All right, bring on the meat. You're a man after my husband's own heart, aren't you?
Fish.
Fish. Okay. Okay. Pizza. So think of your favorite food, or whatever it is. Now, think of something pho, who makes it best? Who makes it best in your family?
Some guy on Badan Street.
You, okay. And where did you learn to make it? Ah, from the internet. Oh, I was hoping Grandma or Mom would come up, but all right, the internet. I don't have a lot of experience with the internet. It's kind of my cross to bear, but okay. You think of, even if we say food, my favorite food, what if I think about my favorite food and who's making it? Where are they? What would I see? What do I see on the walls if I'm inside? Maybe I'm right there at the street corner and Grandma's, I can't get down as low as Grandma's, but right down there cooking the pho, and I'm on the little blue stool waiting for it. I don't know. What goes in it? I think about what I would see in this picture. What would I see? Well, I would see baby Charlie. I see Elise and Mike cuddled around baby Charlie, and I see that it's fall. I see that the shadows. I see the tree trunk, the branches. I probably see the leaves falling. Now, if I think about that picture, if I step into it and listen very closely, what would I hear? Help me out. What would I hear in this picture? Ah, I can hear the wind rustling in the trees. Perfect. How about people sounds? Can I hear any people? Laughing. She's giggling. Yeah, I can hear her giggling. Do I hear any sounds from Mike or Elise? Kisses. Kisses, okay. Or raspberries. Do you do raspberries on your little ones? That blowing sound, we call them raspberries. Okay, I can hear that. And the giggling. So I'm brainstorming now. Then I think, all right, if I stepped into that picture again and smell. Can I smell? Can I smell anything? Can I smell anything on, I don't know which of these people you would be. Maybe you're Mike, maybe you're Elise, maybe you're watching the three of these people. But what would I smell? Am I close enough to smell the baby smell? Right? Am I close enough? Can I smell something out in nature? Am I smelling something on the grill? Is pork loin going on the grill over here behind me? But what would I smell in this place? If I jump in and feel it, what am I feeling? Maybe I reach out and grab that tree trunk and feel the rough texture of the branch. Maybe I'm holding baby Charlie and I can feel her under me. Maybe I'm writing it from the perspective of Elise and she can feel Mike's hand under her hand, and probably her other hand is behind Charlie. Okay? And then, and sometimes taste works and sometimes it doesn't. If I'm writing about my favorite food, I'm certain the taste and the texture in my mouth is going to play a role in it. If I'm not writing about food, what might I taste? But I use all of my senses and brainstorm. The whole time I'm writing. I'm not thinking, oh, that's the wrong answer. There are no wrong answers. That's what I love about this, right? I'll never be wrong. It's mine, so it can never be wrong. So you say, I can't do that. You can. Oftentimes with my 12-year-olds, we write about hands. And they say, we're writing about hands? Or you looked at me like, really? Are you kidding me? No, I'm not. Hands. They're a great starter of poetry. One time I had a student write about hands, and he wrote about his grandfather getting the kite up for the grandchildren and holding it by the string and passing it off to him with his heart still attached to the string. Now, that's a great line of poetry. That was the last line of the poem, and of course I don't have a poem with me, so. But I do have this poem sent to me because this child, who I taught earlier this school year, wrote this poem, which she then sent into the South Dakota State Poetry Writing Competition, and she won second place. And she started by describing hands of somebody she loved. She chose her grandmother. I watch them as they work. They are soft and bony, wrinkled and well worn. They take a needle and pull it in and out of the fabric. The fabric is a midnight blue, covered in glitter that rubs off on your hands and mine. On the table is an array of buttons, scattered about in coats of red, blue, and green. You grab a ribbon from the pile and sew it on, pulling the needle in and out like it is dancing. You give me the needle, but I stumble clumsily and trip like an unpracticed ballerina. Then I feel your hands on mine, guiding me, our hands joined together in a perfect waltz. She didn't write that first go round, right? But she had to get the brainstorming. She had to find the idea. She knew she wanted to write about hands. She knew she wanted to write, actually, Mrs. Toller wanted her to write about hands. She might have rolled her eyes. But she went, okay, I'll play along with you, Mrs. Toller. And she thought of someone she loved and what that person does typically with their hands. Another student, many years ago, wrote a hand poem about her mother, who was a pianist. But the final line of her poem was, let me think of it, her heavenly sound cradles me. After writing about how she plays the piano, her heavenly sound cradles me. So, you can write a poem. Do you want to give it a go? Do you have something to write with? No. You thought, oh, you were going to come and just observe. I want you to write. So here are the rules if we were to write. And I really wanted you to write. Doesn't anybody have any paper? Don't you want to put me to the test? Oh, yes. Put me to the test. Let's see. Let's see if we can come up with something. Yeah? Well, you don't have to share it. That's a rule in my class. You never have to share what you write unless you want to. Never. That's a rule, right? Writing poetry is private and it's personal. And it doesn't belong to me. One time, a million years ago, I had a student write a wonderful poem about his father who was a seed corn salesman. Do you know what that is? A seed corn salesman. So if I sell seed corn in the United States, I sell a particular variety of corn that you would plant in your farm. Okay? So I'm a seed corn salesman. So when I deliver the seed corn, he talked about his dad delivering the seed corn. But he also talked about that seed corn as seeds of promise. Right? Because you see the promise is in that little, oh, I loved this poem. I said to him, oh, this is so good. Change this word very interesting. So find a different word for this and change this. And so then when he was finished doing all that, he said to me, I said, oh good, let's submit this to a competition. He said, you know, Mrs. Teller, I don't want to submit it. I don't like my poem nearly as much now that you fixed it. Oh, there's a lesson in that, right? It means these are not my poems. They belong to my students. They belong to my students. And I might say, oh, I'm wondering if you can come up with a different word here. I'm wondering if that one works very well. But the fact of the matter is, I can't tell my student to change a word, and I would never tell my student, change this word to this word, because this is not my poem. This is the student's poem, right? Okay, so here would be the rules if we were doing it, and if you're doing it, this was my hope that we would all write a poem, but maybe we won't. The rules are, I come up with the topic. They say, that's not fair, Mrs. Toller. Trust me, I come up with a broad topic, like hands. Are you all going to write the same poem? No, because you're not all going to think of the same set of hands, right? You're not all going to think of the same set of hands belonging to the same person, doing the same kinds of activities with those hands. Okay? The second, your job is to write everything that comes into your brain. There is no wrong answer. You have to write for 2 minutes, solid. Okay, I'll tell you the truth. Sometimes I cheat. If my students are writing like crazy, they're not watching the clock. I make them keep writing. I go 2 minutes, 3 minutes, 3.5, about that time they're done. Okay, their hand's getting tired. We start from general, like I might start, sometimes I start with wheels. My boys love to write about wheels. Wheels. Okay, what are the size of these wheels? What is the shape? What's it on? Is it on my skateboard? Is it on my rollerblades? Is it the wheel on the tractor? Is it the swinging wheel in the backyard, the inner tube? Is it the wheel on my car or my first bike? Wheels. What's the size? What color is it? What's it on? What sound does it make? See how I would go with this? My job throughout this is to talk you through. I talk. What's the size, shape? What if I stepped into this picture? What would I hear? Do I hear any background noises? Do I hear any noises from machinery? Do I hear any buzzing of telephones? Do I hear people sounds or nature sounds? What would I hear in this place? If I stepped into this picture that you have in your mind, I took a deep breath, what would I smell? Really bring that place, that one snapshot of life to life. Make it real. We're not worried right now because we're brainstorming. We don't worry yet about a simile or a metaphor or personification. Once we get our brainstorming down and our picture, then we can work on those things. They come later. So think of, but always when I do this, I start with one concrete image, one image that I can see, that I can feel, that I can touch. Sometimes I'll start with something like the balls. Balls. We all know them. What ball is it? So now I have those boys who say, I can never write a poem, Mrs. Tyler, because I am a basketball player. I cannot write a poem. Okay? How about balls? How does it feel in your hand? How big is it? Can I bounce it? What sound does it make? Can I twirl it? Is it soft? Is it a soft rubber ball? Is it a spongy ball? Do I hold it in one hand? Does it take more than one hand? So bring that image to life. And I never let them quit. While I'm talking, their job is to just keep writing. After 2 minutes, I shake out their hands. Then, depending on the age and depending on how many times my students have written together as a class, sometimes I have them in small groups, very small, like 3, 4, or 5. Share what they came up with. So they laugh about, oh, I was writing about this, or they'll start with ball, basketball, soccer ball, baseball. Oh, I remember the time that my dad taught me how to catch a baseball, right? With my left hand, and always, I can hear him saying it today. Always 2 hands, Karen. Always put that other hand, make sure you got that ball. So as soon as you hit it in the mitt, you get your second hand up there, make sure you got it, then you worry about the throw. Right? Okay, so they share. And then they say, oh, I like the way they did that. So the next time they're writing and brainstorming, they practice doing something that their fellow student just did. All right, and then after a few minutes, I give them another topic. But I see that most of us aren't here to actually do it as a workshop, just to listen. What questions might you have of me? How many of you are English teachers? Are you an English teacher? Good. What age do you teach?
I teach with from 6 to 9.
Oh, they can do this.
Yes, sometimes.
Oh, they can do this, yeah. 2-minute poetry.
I used to write poems when I was a secondary student. Okay, like that.
Uh-huh, good. Good. Do you have any questions for me? Seriously, I have done this for so many years, and my students invariably do very, very well with their poetry. They come up with amazing insights. Amazing. Because they find things that they don't remember in their brain. Now, sometimes they'll say to me, Mrs. Tyler, I can't remember my grandmother's kitchen, but I can remember the smell of it. It doesn't matter. Think of what her kitchen might have looked like. Bring it to life with what might have been. It's okay, because your reader doesn't know what your grandma's kitchen looked like either. Make it reasonable or bring it to life. It's not a description of a place, it's just a snapshot. And in that snapshot, you put the details to bring your poem to life. And I think that might be it. Yes?
When you start poems, like you say that how you get the inspiration, that's when you start to write and how it is.
Yeah. So when you start to write, you know, if you sit down, this is my experience. If I sit down and say, I'm going to write a poem, I'm waiting for inspiration.
No inspiration.
Nothing comes, right? I'm like, oh, I don't have anything. But if I start with pulling out topics that lots of us can relate to, and let's just try it. Let's try it. If I start with, did you all have crayons when you were little kids? crayons?
Yeah.
Yeah, you all had crayons. All right, so if I start with crayons, all right, picture crayons. Picture a box of crayons. Or maybe,
Color with
okay,
pencil.
yeah, crayons? Okay, yeah.
You know what is crayon?
Oh, okay,
Color it.
coloring,
Color.
coloring, yeah, colors. But is it better if I say colors?
Yeah.
Okay,
It's a tool
so,
for making color.
colors. So, color. So you're coloring, can you see the box of crayons? Or do you have it in a bucket? Are you in preschool? Or are you at the desk? Or are you at the kitchen table? Did you ever color on the wall? Did you ever draw on the wall?
Yeah.
So we have a spot downstairs in our house where the girls colored on the wall, right? And when we redid our basement, it stayed right there. We didn't redo that. So, colors. List all the colors. And you list. And I'm saying, think of one time, one place, one crayon, or one coloring that you did, or one day in art class, or focus on that time, that place. Now, put yourself in that time and place. Can you hear anything? Is there a teacher talking to you? Are there kids in the background? Are you listening to things going on outside? Are you hearing any mechanical sounds? What would you smell? Can you smell the crayon? Do you have the smelly crayons? Do you hate it because Jane right next to you has the smelly crayons and you've never had the smelly crayons? Yours smell like wax because your mom gets the cheap ones? Huh? Okay, so are you starting to go, oh yeah, I loved coloring. But I always colored my sunshine green. And I don't care if the teacher kept telling me to make it yellow. I was gonna make it green. So maybe as soon as you find your one time and one place, you just ignore Mrs. Toller. You zone her out because now you've got something and you're busy writing, okay? If you're still listening to me, then you're writing down, okay, pink, orange, red, green. I hate to color. I'd really more like to write a note to the girl next to me. Okay, you know what? You took the coloring and you were inspired to do something totally different, and that's okay, right? That's okay. So I think the inspiration comes from an item. One of the best poems I ever wrote was really, I was inspired by a friend of mine who had passed away, and she had a flag outside her front door. And I was going, her daughters were coming to clean the apartment, and I was bringing food for the family, and I came and I saw her flag. I don't even know that I can tell you this. I saw her flag and I thought, that's it. And that's what I'm writing. How fitting that I'm bringing food to her family, because she always was providing food to so many people. And the flag just reminded me so much of her that was my inspiration of writing a poem about her. But if you sit down and wait for the inspiration, it doesn't work that way. And if you're trying to find inspiration, think of things that you love, or think of things that remind you of so-and-so, or make you think of Grandpa, fishing pole, boots. We just got a picture of a different daughter's son, and he was just going out with Grandpa to feed the baby calf because they're calving back in South Dakota. And so he's got this big milk bottle that he just came in. So it's my son-in-law, his dad, and my grandson in this picture. And I think, okay, That milk bottle reminds me of Grandma bringing Elise out to milk or to bottle feed the first calf long ago. And then I have an inspiration. All right, I've talked way too much, huh? Any questions?
So how do we get the rhythm in after all that?
Ah,
How
you
do
know
we
what?
do the writing?
Then, when you look at your brainstorming, you want to, let's go back to the poem. Can I get it back there? Can you get it back to the poem slide up?
There you go.
Okay. So, she's done her brainstorming. Now she's going to say, all right, she's talked about those hands, right? She wants to think, she's already told us, Grandma teaches her, she's going to talk about Grandma teaching her how to sew, right? So she's thinking about the fabric and the sewing. And so she says, the fabric is a midnight blue. We've got that. But she's got it covered in glitter that rubs off on your hands and mine. We're so connected, right? We're both connected to this. On the table is an array of buttons scattered about in coats of red, blue, and green. Actually, when she won second place, they emailed me and said, she doesn't really mean coats of red, blue, and I said, I don't know if you think she really means that or not. That's what she wrote. It stays. That's what she wrote. Scattered about in coats of red, blue, and green. You grab a ribbon from the pile and sew it on, pulling the needle in and out like it is dancing. Okay, so somewhere then you decide, okay, I want to make a simile in here. So this goes in and out. Oh, like it is dancing. Now I've got an image, right? The dancing. I'm not going to try and find another image. I'm going to just keep that same kind of dancing theme. You give me the needle, but when I say I don't mean I, because this is not my poem. But I stumble clumsily and trip like an unpracticed ballerina, right? She's saying I mess up. I can't do it right the first time. But now she's into that. Then I feel your hands on mine guiding me. And she keeps that dance thing going. Our hands join together in a perfect waltz. She doesn't tell you what to think about her grandma. She doesn't tell you what she thinks about her grandma. She shows you one snapshot of life. And so I think once you get your brainstorming down, and then you say to yourself, okay, what is this like? Or is there a metaphor for this? Then I think you find that. As for finding a rhythmy pattern, I'm not nearly as concerned about that. In my mind, that's for people who are really great poets to do a rhyming scheme and, the same pattern. Yeah, I'm a simpleton. I teach 12-year-olds, right? And they don't want to get caught up in rhyming, because then the feeling isn't really there. Did that answer your question?
Pretty much.
Is that pretty much yes or pretty much no? I think that if you trust me and get the brainstorming down, I really, really think the metaphors and similes, you look for ways to put in alliteration, wrinkled and well-worn. Look for ways to put in alliteration. My students, before we ever write poetry, we study a lot of poetry. We look at a lot of poetry and what it means. so they're used to looking for similes and metaphors and alliteration and personification. So then they know what it is. What? Yes.
So comparison, similarity.
Simile. A simile. You don't know the
Similarity.
A simile is. Do I have a simile, right? Like, if I say, like an unpracticed ballerina, a simile is a comparison between two nouns that are not really alike. I can't say Elise is like Sarah, because those are both people, right? But if I say my grandmother is like a miniature tornado, that's a simile if I use like or as. If I say my grandmother is a miniature tornado, that's a metaphor. Yeah, right? So metaphors and similes. Okay? How are we doing? Any other questions?
What is more important?
Oh, I'm sorry.
Yeah, it's not a question but a request.
I'll come back.
Because we would love to listen to one of your poems. Can we?
You know what? The truth of the matter is, I have no poems of mine here. Early on, when we first got to Vietnam, I didn't have enough memory on my computer, so I had to put everything, take everything off my computer. So it's all on a flash drive somewhere at home. But
No problem, because you can make any lines of poems now.
It doesn't
make
work
a
that way.
poem right now? No.
It
I
doesn't
don't
work
think
that
so.
way.
Yes, it can.
I don't know that I can make a poem right now.
Because you know what? Your explanation and teaching is like a beautiful song also. Today, your explanation and your teaching is like a song, beautiful song.
Pay that woman some money or something. Oh, thank
Give her a
you.
cookie.
Thank you. That's very nice.
Yes.
She said my teaching was like a beautiful song.
A little baby.
I'll tell you a line of poetry that, not really a line, but a line that my son said. My son, who actually says to me when he was a 7th grader in my class, he said to me, "Mother, I hate it when you talk and expect us to write. I hate that." And I said, "Noah Toller, I don't know why you hate that, because you never listen to me anyway." But he didn't like the listening and writing at the same time. But when he was younger than 7th grade, he was in the back seat of our car, and we're driving to town, and it was Teacher Appreciation Week. And my older daughter was up front with me, and she said, "I'm trying to, is in up front with me, and Noah is in the back seat." He says, "Mother, how do you write bomb?" I said, "Noah, aren't you writing on your teacher appreciation card?" And he said, "Yes." "How do you spell bomb?"
B-O-M-B?
I said, "Oh, what are you writing? Because I don't think I should spell bomb for you." He said, "I'm writing to my teacher, when you say you're the bomb," which means you're great, "you're the bomb, you're the match that lights us."
The best imagination than just spelling.
Yeah. So my daughter Elise in the front seat said, "Oh, can I use his metaphor, Mom? You're the match that lights us?" "No, Elise, you can't use
Like
his
that.
metaphor." So, yeah. I don't really have any poems to tell you.
Yes, but I really love your explanation and your imagination of your daughters about bomb, rather than just spelling B-O-M-B.
Yeah, yes. So, I'm glad that you're here, and I hope that you
I
take it.
think I really love your teaching today because I have some sense like you.
Oh, good, good. I hope your students go with it and they produce
Yeah,
great,
sure,
great
definitely.
poems. Yeah. So,
Wow.
and the rest of you, I hope you just grab something and think, maybe it's a picture, maybe it's a hand-me-down, maybe it's a piece of clothing, maybe it's a pair of shoes, maybe it's, right? It's anything. Start with something concrete that you can describe. Or that you, concrete meaning not concrete like tough, but concrete that you can, yes, something you can hold or touch. Are we good?
Yes.
I don't have anything else unless you have some more questions. I
What's
hope-
more important in the poem? The rhythm, or the idea, or the image? You see?
See, that's a good question. Did you hear? What's the most important part of a poem? I think the most important part of the poem is not the simile, it's not the metaphor, it is the feeling that you convey to your reader. I have, for instance, I think I can recite this poem. County Cullen wrote a poem that's an American poet from the Harlem Renaissance time period. County Cullen wrote a poem called, I don't know what it's called, but it goes like this. Once riding in old Baltimore, heart filled, head filled with glee, I saw a Baltimorean keep looking straight at me. Now I was 10 and he was, now I was 12 and he was something no whit bigger. So I smiled, but he stuck out his tongue and called me nigger. I traveled all of Baltimore from May until December. Of all the things that happened there, that's all that I remember. So I think, you know, that snapshot of life kind of image, one time, one place that makes you feel something. So he didn't go on to say how it made him feel because you already know. So that's what we're working for, I think, is a picture of life that you're sharing with your reader. And in it, you put only the details that will make them feel something that you're going for, the same emotion that you're going for. So I think, you know, they can analyze poetry forever. And unfortunately, sometimes as English teachers, we analyze poetry enough to make our students dislike poetry. You know, it's too much.
They
you
do
know.
that in Vietnam too.
But yeah, and it kills the poem, right? So I think the most important thing is the feeling and sharing an image or in the details that you put in that image.
How many sentences, how many lines the poem
Yeah.
could be?
Yeah.
You know, how
And
many-
that's a common question. My kids ask me that all the time. How many lines does this poem have to be? I don't know, I say. How long do your legs have to be? Long enough to hit the ground, right?
They have structure.
Yeah, long enough to hit the ground.
But no,
Long enough to get the job done, right?
no poem is as short as three words, right?
Right. You know, I would say, truly, for my students, when I'm grading them, I usually have them do this. It must have 3 elements of poetry. I don't care what elements. 3 elements of poetry. And I'm sure that this was a graded poet. Sometimes I grade them and sometimes I don't. So I say, they write, 10 poems. And then I say to them, pick one to make your very best, to turn in for me to grade. And you must have 3 elements of poetry. So elements of poetry would be this: wrinkled and well-worn is alliteration. Yep, there's one. Midnight blue. I like that, but I don't know that I'd count it for an element of poetry, but it's good. Certainly I would put, you sew it on, pulling it like it is dancing. Simile. I stumble clumsily and trip like an unpracticed ballerina. 3, our hands joined together in a perfect waltz, a metaphor. 4, yes, they met my level of what I wanted from the poem. So if you don't tell them the number of lines, because you have kids, believe it or not, I have them in my class anyway. If I say, you must write a 4-line poem, you know what I'll get? I have 120 students. I'll get 100 4-line poems. If I say, you must write 20 lines, they might have 10 really good lines, and then they have 10 junk, because they had to have 20 lines, right? So that's why I want to give them, hey, we've studied poetry, you know poetic elements. Now I want you to show me that you can use poetic elements effectively. So I would be very, I don't know that I have ever told them the number of lines for a poem. I don't know that I've ever done that.
Do
Yeah.
you read poem? Something?
I read poetry a lot.
Who's your favorite, and who's the musician that read the poetry, the character to the music? Do you know?
Who's the musician? I don't really know the question.
As I find some, Bob Dylan.
Oh,
Dylan?
Bob Dylan, sure.
Do you,
Hello, is it Hello Darkness, My Old Friend? Is that Bob Dylan? No. Oh, Simon and Garfunkel. But
who's your favorite poet?
my favorite poet in the United States is Clefcorn, K-L-O-E-F-K-O-R-N. He's a Nebraska poet. His name is William Clefcorn, and he was poet laureate of the country not too long ago. I think it was probably 15 years ago, like yesterday. Let me see if I can give you some William Clefcorn poetry. So this is Nebraska. You feel like that. You feel like letting your tires go flat, like letting the mice build a nest in your muffler, like being no more than a truck in the weeds, sticky with honey,
The red and blue.
something, with a old man in your lap, like it's the old deserted pickup that our farm places in South Dakota have many of, holding a skinny old man in your lap while he watches the road, waiting for someone to wave to. That's South Dakotans. They go down gravel roads and they're driving their pickups and they're waving to all their neighbors, waiting for someone to wave to. You feel like that. You feel like waving. So you leave your hand out instead, gliding lark-like over the wheat, over the houses. William Clefcorn. He speaks to me. He might not speak to you because you're not a South Dakotan. and you don't grow up in the Midwest, but boy, those images are very real to me. Like images about barns that are falling down are very real images to me because of where I'm from. So, yeah, he's one of my favorites.
Thank you.
Yeah, you're welcome. Okay,
Any question?
It's
ready?
very interesting.
Good, I'm glad, I'm glad. I hope it was good for you.
I think the phone question to ask is that do you know any poem that has been converted into song?
Do I know, well, I don't know.
I want to ask about the poetic features in writing songs and music.
And you know what? Many times, teachers in my school district, especially at the, they tie together really well. There are really great metaphors and similes in many songs, especially old songs, I think. I don't know if they are too common in rap, but they're, you know, Simon and Garfunkel, Bob Dylan, they have, so the one I was just reciting, Hello Darkness, my old friend, I've come to talk with you again. You know this?
Yeah.
So oftentimes you can use lyrics from songs to inspire your students to be excited about poetry. Did that not, it doesn't look like maybe that answered your question though.
Yeah.
Oh, it did? Okay.
Thank you.
Yeah. And of course, my students, their version of what makes a great song and my version of what makes a great song, oh yeah, totally different. So I have to work really hard to find lyrics from them that I think, oh, this is a really great example of a simile or a metaphor or something. Okay. Well, thank you for your attention. Thank you for coming. Yes.